films, and some are really conventional, and some are really unconventional. And this is maybe the classical one, or
This is
the
maybe the
most
what?
classical one, I would
The
say,
what?
because of this archetypal
Conventional one.
storyline.
You said conventional one, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just more
Did it
conventional.
hurt
I
you?
have
I'm
no
sorry.
problem with making conventional, as long as it's exciting, as long as it's interesting. There's always, I'm a dramatist. Never forget that. We are dramatists. If you write or make movies or theater or whatever it is, we are dramatists. We must make a story that people want to see. And that is the hardest thing to do. It's also perhaps the most satisfying when people come out of a theater. Now, not everybody's going to like your movie, that's for sure, and I know that better than most. But it's truly wonderful when you can communicate in all the countries of the world. And I mean that, all the countries. And I've had a few films that have really played well everywhere, except maybe New Zealand, which is the middle of nowhere. And I'm not so sure they're so bright there.
And if you already mentioned this father and son relationship, then I have to ask why is the main theme of your work?
No, in Alexander, which there's three versions of it, the mother and the father are both key figures in his life. Key figures. I had a strong father and a strong mother, and I think the Alexander motif of the interaction of those three people is the key to the movie. So no, I'm not. And also in this Savages, there's a very two strong women, and there is a motif of Salma Hayek and her daughter, which is very important to the denouement. And there's also, we cut it because of time, but there was also a story of Blake Lively and her mother, who was played by Uma Thurman. So there was two parallel mother-daughter stories, you see.
Okay, then let's go back to the idea, how the idea is born. What can be an idea? Can it be just a character or a dialogue, or do you see a scene, a whole scene, or how does it begin? Other times, not by Wall Street.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
What can
Andy,
be an
can you
idea
help me?
for you? What can be? Can it be just a character, or could it be something else? A dialogue, a line, a scene? I don't know. How does it start?
How a movie could start.
How do you
Yeah.
get the idea to make a movie or to write a screenplay or to develop a story?
Thank you.
What is the basis?
There's no rule again. I mean, if I'd have to search my memory for all the films, but Wall Street came out of a feeling of the Zeitgeist, seeing these people on Wall Street and saying to myself, my God, there's been no really business movie since Executive Suite. I think my father, my feelings for New York, we need a mood. We need to go to this Zeitgeist of this new Wall Street where people are making a fortune. It's important. That's where the idea, I suppose that's where it comes from. The modern America, that's often been my basis of my stories. Born on the 4th of July is a book written by Ron Kovic about his experiences in a pre-war America, during the war and after the war. A powerful book, and I thought it said a lot about America and its entry into the Vietnam War. Before, during, and after, so I went for it. Heaven and Earth was a Vietnamese side of that story. Also a very powerful book. Oh, JFK started in a very strange way because the Kennedy assassination had been, had been in the past and was not being discussed. It was out of the picture. People had forgotten and moved on, and it was about 1989, 90. And a woman who I knew, a very bright woman, gave me a book, and she said, you got to make this movie. And it was about her friend Jim Garrison, who'd written a second book about his prosecution of the Kennedy case, and he paid a high price for that. I didn't read it at first. She said it's a great thriller. I wasn't, I wasn't politically motivated to do the Kennedy assassination. No, I read a book called On the Trail of the Assassins by Garrison, and it was a page turner because not only were the stakes huge, but the way he wrote it, he made it entertaining. He made it into a thriller, a suspense thriller, very much like Z by Costa Gavras, which was one of my favorite movies. And the idea was you see the event. I remember the structuring of that. the idea was that we would see the event the way the world saw it, the way the world bought it at the time. And as we go, like in Z, you start to unpeel one more layer, one more layer, one more layer. And all of this basically happened. But we structured it in a way, like the book, where it was really exciting. But then in addition to the Garrison story, we brought in 3 other stories, which was the Dealey Plaza, because he never was there except to visit one time. So we were able to have him tell the story in the courtroom. We also brought in the Lee Harvey Oswald story, which came from our research and other sources. So that's a third story. And then the other story was a Donald Sutherland story, which came from another gentleman I met on my travels and my researchers. So that was an extremely complicated case of trying to blend 4 stories, all pointing to a murder that occurred that was beyond the public's belief, and an assassination that was carried out at the highest levels of government. So that came from a simple thriller, but a thriller is always a good basis for a movie. What happens next? What happens next? That's the DNA, if you want, of drama, and it's the best advice Hitchcock ever gave is, to make them want to see, make them want what happens next. Keep it back, hold it back. Do you show the bomb or do you not show the bomb? If you show the bomb, I think you guys have studied this, you know that the audience is going to be more involved because they know the bomb is there, but the protagonist does not know it. So that's far more tense, and the guy sits down and he blows up.
By the way, you mentioned Hitchcock. Then, where did you study screenwriting?
Andy, help me.
Where did you study screenwriting? Or
where? Okay. I studied screenwriting at New York University Film School in 1970 and 71, and I also read many screenplays, and I always liked it. I wanted to direct, but I also kept writing the whole time. I always used to write 2 screenplays a year at least, even when I was unemployed. Always tried to, and treatments too. I also wrote treatments, churning them out, sending them out, getting rejections. I got a lot of rejections, and trying to believe in myself. Andy rejected a couple of my scripts.
I'm not proud of one of them.
And I also, by the way, before that, when I went to Vietnam, the second time, I had written a novel as a young, when I was 19 years old, called Child's Night Dream. That novel went back and finished 30 years later, and it was published in 1997 by St. Martin's Press. So I always had loved writing, but I think the concept of going to film school after Vietnam and dealing with the eye as opposed to the brain, just seeing with your eyes, was very important in Vietnam to stay alive.
And is it true that your mentor was Martin Scorsese?
He was one of our teachers. We had a lot of good teachers at NYU. He was certainly one of the most energetic and one of the younger ones. He was a wild man, yeah.
And who would you mention as your master, or somebody tutored you, or somebody you've learned from a lot?
Unfortunately, it doesn't quite work that way. There were good teachers there. I learned a little bit from everyone. I got jobs where I could. I was a production assistant on several TV and films when I could get that job. Robert Bolt certainly played a role in my life. He was the famous screenwriter because an Italian producer, Fernando Ghia, optioned a treatment of mine in 1975, and he loved it. And Robert with Robert, I wrote a draft. Robert took me into a room for 3 weeks, for almost 3 hours at a session, and helped me to, in essence, he rewrote the screenplay, but he made me see it through his eyes, how to write. I learned a lot from Robert Bolt, a lot. And then, of course, there's the help you get along the way, the right producers, the right agents. I can't say there's one person. Peter Guber, of all people, gave me my first real shot because he made the movie on a screenplay of mine called Midnight Express. So Peter sent me to London to work with Andy's favorite director, Alan Parker. And,
Never lived this down.
Who treated me like shit. But anyway, he made the movie, and the picture was a hit. And so Peter Guber played a huge role also. I mean, but there's no classic one man, although Marty Bregman loves to take credit, I can hardly say that's true.
And did you become a director because you were unsatisfied with the realization of your script?
No, I wanted to be a director since I went to film school, and like all the arrogant young people in film school, I thought I was Jean-Luc Godard when I got out. So I wanted to, and Buñuel too. I thought, why can't I make the same movies?
But he didn't
it's
use any
unbelievable.
script.
What?
Godard didn't use any script.
They did not use scripts, yeah. Well, wait a second, no, Buñuel did. Jean Carrière wrote a lot of his scripts, and they're very well done. In fact, I worked with Carrière on a script. Godard is eccentric. Truffaut certainly does write scripts, and Claude Chabrol wrote scripts. Most of them have scripts now, and there is a script for Breathless. I think I read it, and it's descriptions, but certainly he had a plan in his mind, And I've gone that way too, I've written scripts. When I did the JFK script, it was so complicated a script. It was so heavy because we had so many cuts that when I realized if I gave it to Warner Brothers, they wouldn't understand it. And they wouldn't make it because it wasn't understandable, but I understood it. So I took out everything that I knew that I would do in the shoot, so I tried to make the script easier to read. And they read that and they loved it. But I consciously took out a lot of the repetitions that would occur for rhythm purposes. So it isn't so much the rhythm, it's so much show them the story, the pace. Don't, some of the stylistic flourishes, leave them out okay? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But definitely, I would never make a movie without a script, I don't think. A documentary, maybe.
I wanted to ask it later, but here's time for that. Do you put your visual conception into the script? Do you write about it?
I did originally. Yes, always. All scripts. Midnight Express, Scarface, Conan the Barbarian, You're the Dragon. I was writing it and seeing it the way But the other directors took it to their other places they wanted to go. But I did always see the script. Always, you have to see a movie in your mind. That's not to say you see it final, but you see the basics of it. I don't know who the actor is, but I see a face. And often I come back at the end and I realize I could cast it with another face completely. It doesn't have to be that type of person.